Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
It was a hot, dry night in September of 1666. London was quiet. The great city slept, but its many small wooden houses stood close together, almost touching. The air was warm and heavy. You could smell the dry timber of the buildings, ready to burn. A strange silence filled the narrow streets, a quietness before something bad. London had just suffered from a terrible sickness, the plague. Many people had died. Now the city waited, like a dry forest waiting for a spark. London was huge, with almost 400,000 people living there. It was the biggest city in Britain. Most of its buildings were old, made of wood and covered with tar. Even though rules said people should build with stone, many still used cheap wood. The houses were tall and often had upper floors that stuck out over the street. This made the already narrow streets even darker and tighter. If fire started in one house, it could easily jump to the next. The city was not planned well. It was a mix of many small winding paths and alleys. These crowded spaces meant that fire could spread very fast. What made it worse was a strong wind that often blew from the east. This wind could carry flames and sparks over long distances. The combination of dry wooden houses, narrow streets, and an east wind was a perfect recipe for disaster. But the people of London did not know this. They were asleep in their beds, tired after days of hard work and worry.
They thought they were safe. No one understood that a small fire could quickly become a huge problem for the whole city. They were unaware that the next morning would bring a change that would stay forever. The fire starts. It was just after midnight on Sunday, September 2, 1666. A small fire began in a bakery on Pudding Lane. This bakery belonged to a man named Thomas Farriner. The fire started fast. Inside, the Farriner family quickly woke up. They had to escape. They found a way out through an upstairs window. They climbed to the house next door, away from the flames. But not everyone made it out. The family's maidservant was too scared. She stood by the window, unable to move, too afraid to jump. The fire grew around her. Sadly, when the bakery burned down, she became the fire's first victim. Neighbors soon saw the smoke and flames. They rushed to help, trying to put out the fire. After about an hour, parish constables arrived. They saw that the fire was growing quickly. They knew what needed to be done. To stop the fire from spreading, they said houses nearby must be pulled down. This was the main way people fought fires then, by making gaps to stop the flames. However, the house owners did not want their homes destroyed. They protested. They said the Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, needed to give permission, so someone went to call for him. When Lord Mayor Bloodworth arrived, the situation was already getting worse.
The fire was already burning the houses next to the bakery. It was moving closer to big stores and places with many things that could burn easily, near the river. People who knew about fires, the more experienced firefighters, told the mayor again that houses must be pulled down. This was the only way to make a fire break and stop it. But Lord Mayor Bloodworth refused. He said that most people in those houses were renting them, not owning them. He said it was hard to find the real owners to ask for permission. People believed he was not a strong leader, but someone who just agreed with others. He became worried and panicked. When people kept asking him to act, he made a very famous and careless remark. He said, "A woman might piss it out." Then he left the scene. This was a critical moment. The mayor's refusal to act, his hesitation, stopped the important work of tearing down houses. This delay was very bad. Because of this, a small fire, which could have been easily controlled, was now allowed to grow. The fire became much bigger and more dangerous. People wondered why such a simple action was not taken. The city's leader did not act, and the fire grew stronger with every passing minute. On Sunday morning, Samuel Pepys went to the Tower of London. From there, he looked out over the city. A strong wind blew from the east. Pepys saw the small fire had become very big. It was like a giant monster, eating around 300 houses as it moved towards the River Thames. Even the houses on London Bridge were burning. Many people were scared. Pepys quickly took a boat onto the river. He saw a sad sight near Pudding Lane. People were trying to save their belongings. They threw things into the river or loaded them onto small boats called lighters. Poor people stayed in their homes until the fire touched them. Then they ran to boats or climbed to other places by the water. Pepys went to see the King and the Duke of York at Whitehall. He told them what he saw. He said that unless houses were pulled down, nothing could stop the fire. The King was worried. He told Pepys to go back and command the Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, to pull down houses everywhere. But the Lord Mayor was tired and confused. He said the fire was moving faster than they could pull houses down. He then went home to bed. King Charles II soon saw that houses were still standing. He made his own orders to pull down houses west of the fire. By Sunday afternoon, the fire had become a raging firestorm. It was so big that it created its own weather. Very hot air went up fast. This pulled in strong winds from the ground. These winds made the flames burn even hotter and faster. The fire pushed hard into the center of the city in a wide arc. The city's fire engines were not helpful. They were large pumps, but they were not easy to move. Some did not even have wheels. Firefighters tried to pull or push them through the crowded streets. They tried to get the engines to the river to fill them with water, but several of the engines fell into the River Thames. The heat from the flames was too great for the remaining engines to get close enough to fight the fire. By Sunday evening, the fire had traveled 500 meters west along the river. It was the most damaging fire London had ever seen, completely out of control. What began as a local accident was now a threat to the whole city. 4. People are scared. On Monday, the fire grew bigger. It moved west and north across the city. The wind pushed the flames, making them spread faster. People watched their homes burn, and many felt a deep sadness and fear. The fire reached important parts of London. Bankers in Lombard Street hurried to save their gold coins before the fire melted them. The Royal Exchange, a big place for business and shopping, also caught fire. Soon it was just a burning shell. As the fire grew, people became very scared. They did not just fear the flames, they started to fear each other. strange stories began to spread. Some said that the fire was not an accident. They believed that foreign people, like the French or Dutch, were starting new fires on purpose. England was at war with these countries, so the rumors grew quickly. People looked at foreigners with anger and suspicion. Mobs formed in the streets.
They attacked innocent foreign people, hurting them because of these untrue stories. The Duke of York, the king's brother, had to ride through the streets with his soldiers to save many foreigners from these angry crowds. Everyone wanted to escape the burning city. Rich people tried to move their expensive things. They paid a lot of money for carts and boats. A cart that cost a little before now cost a huge amount, like 40 pounds. This was a fortune for many people. The city gates became very crowded. Thousands of people pushed to get out, carrying their belongings, using carts and horses. The gates were narrow, and soon nobody could move. It was a terrible mess. People felt trapped, unable to leave. The city leaders even closed the gates for a short time, hoping people would stop trying to save their goods and instead fight the fire. But the fear was too great. This Monday was a day of true panic. The city was burning, and its people were filled with fear and anger. Order was breaking down, and everyone wondered what would happen next. 5. The worst day. Tuesday, the 4th of September, was the worst day of the Great Fire. People called it Black Tuesday. The fire was incredibly strong. The Duke of York and his men tried to stop the flames. They made a line at Temple Bar, near the River Fleet. They hoped the river would be a natural break for the fire. But the fire was too powerful. Early that morning, the strong east wind pushed the flames.
The fire jumped over the River Fleet. It moved past the Duke's men, who had to run away. Now the royal court at Whitehall Palace was in great danger. During this day, the fire moved across almost the whole city. It reached the great St. Paul's Cathedral. Many people thought St. Paul's would be safe. It had very thick stone walls and a wide open space around it. People brought their most valued things inside. They filled its crypt with books and other items, thinking they would be protected. But the cathedral was being fixed at that time. It was covered in wood scaffolding on the outside. This wooden scaffolding quickly caught fire. The flames rose high. Within only 30 minutes, the lead roof of the cathedral began to melt. This hot liquid metal flowed down the streets. It looked like a river of hot lava. The heat was so strong that some of the cathedral's big stones broke apart with loud cracking sounds. Soon, the spiritual heart of the city was burning. St. Paul's Cathedral, a place of hope and safety, turned into a ruin. The sight filled everyone with deep hopelessness. Their most important church, a symbol of their faith and strength, was gone. It was a terrible sign of how powerful and destructive the fire had become. There seemed to be nowhere safe, nowhere left to run. The fire had taken their homes, their things, and now their most sacred place. The citizens felt lost and truly afraid. 6. Stopping the fire.
The fire raged without stopping, consuming everything in its path. Lord Mayor Bloodworth was no longer leading. London desperately needed new leadership. King Charles II saw this urgent need and decided to act. The king put his younger brother, James, the Duke of York, in charge.
James was known for being brave and energetic. He quickly set up command posts to give orders. James rode through the burning streets day and night. He helped people and worked to keep order. The king gave James the power to order houses to be pulled down. This was a hard but very important decision to make. The main strategy to fight the fire was to create fire breaks. This meant destroying buildings that were in the fire's direct path. These empty spaces were meant to stop the flames from spreading further. At first, people tried to pull down houses using long poles called fire hooks. But the fire was moving too fast and too strong. It jumped over these smaller gaps. So a more extreme and dangerous plan began. Soldiers used gunpowder. They carefully placed gunpowder inside houses that stood in the fire's way. Then they blew these buildings up. This created much wider and quicker fire breaks. It was a very risky method, but it was now seen as the only hope to halt the fire. A huge fear gripped everyone. The fire was moving quickly towards the east side of the city. In that direction stood the mighty Tower of London. Inside the tower, there were enormous stores of gunpowder, hundreds of tons.
If the fire reached this massive store, it would cause a devastating explosion. Such an event would make the disaster many times worse. The soldiers guarding the Tower of London understood the terrible danger. They did not wait for direct orders from James or the king. They took matters into their own hands. They started blowing up houses themselves in the area around the tower. These loud and powerful explosions created a strong, wide, empty zone. This brave and quick action worked. It successfully stopped the fire just before it could reach the tower's gunpowder. It was a close race against time, and the tower garrison won. Then, on Tuesday evening, a crucial change happened. The strong east wind, which had fed the fire for days, finally became weak. It almost stopped completely. Without this powerful wind, the fire could not spread as quickly or as fiercely. On Wednesday, 5 September, the combination of the effective fire breaks made with gunpowder and the dying wind began to work wonders. The flames could not jump the wide, empty gaps created by the explosions. The fire became weaker and smaller. Slowly, the terrible inferno began to die down across the ruined capital. Many smaller fires still burned here and there, but the main, destructive Great Fire was finally over. London was safe from the raging flames, though much of the city lay in ashes. 7. Life in the fields. The fire was out, but for many, the trouble had just begun. Thousands of people, around 200,000 in all, had nowhere to go. They moved to open areas like Moorfields, a big public park north of the sea. Here, they made temporary camps. Some tried to build small tents, while others just put up simple shacks from whatever they could find. Many had lost everything they owned. They had no beds, no cooking tools, and very few clothes to keep warm. They were hungry and cold, living in great sadness and poverty, exposed to the elements after days of terror. People searched for any small area that had not burned, hoping to find something left from their homes. The king, Charles II, saw the large numbers of angry and scared refugees. He worried greatly that they might start a rebellion against the crown. To help calm the situation and provide relief, he ordered that supplies of bread be brought into the city every day. New markets were quickly set up around the edges of the burned area to help people get the food they desperately needed, as normal food supplies had stopped. Still, the fire had left people full of deep fear and suspicion. Rumors spread wildly that foreigners had started the fire on purpose. Many believed that the French or Dutch, who were England's enemies in a war at that time, were secretly behind the disaster. This fear grew very strong. One night, a light in the sky over Fleet Street caused a widespread panic in the refugee camps at Moorfields and other places like Islington.
People quickly believed a false story that 50,000 French and Dutch immigrants had risen up and were marching towards Moorfields to murder and pillage. Mobs of frightened people ran into the streets, attacking any foreigners they happened to encounter. Soldiers, including the king's own lifeguards, had to step in and push the confused crowds back into the fields to stop the violence. The light that caused all the alarm turned out to be just a small fire that had flared up again. In this time of great confusion and fear, people desperately looked for someone to blame. They needed a scapegoat to make sense of the catastrophe. A simple Frenchman named Robert Hubert came forward and said he started the fire. He was a watchmaker and was described as not being very smart. First, he claimed he was part of a gang that had started the fire in Westminster. Later, he changed his story and said he had started it alone at the bakery in Pudding Lane, where the fire truly began. There were many doubts about his confession, and some wondered if he was mentally fit to understand what was happening. But in their need for answers, many people wanted to believe him. So he was found guilty of starting the Great Fire. Robert Hubert was hanged in October of 1666. After his death, the truth came out. It became clear that he could not have started the fire at all. He had been on a ship in the North Sea and had only arrived in London 2 days after the fire had already begun.
His tragic story shows how powerful fear and mass hysteria can be, making people act without thinking clearly and leading to terrible injustice for an innocent man. 8. A new city. The huge fire was finally over. London lay in ruins, a sad sight, but people quickly started to think about rebuilding. Many new ideas came forward for how the city should look. Sir Christopher Wren, a famous architect, had a grand plan. He wanted wide, straight streets and big open squares. His design was modern, aiming to make London magnificent. However, Wren's plan was difficult to do. It meant changing land ownership, and people were busy finding food and shelter. So Wren's grand city layout was not used. Instead, much of London was rebuilt on the old street pattern. The narrow, winding alleys returned. But new laws brought important changes. Buildings could no longer have wooden outsides. They had to be made from strong brick or stone. This made the new London much safer from future fires. Streets became a little wider, and the riverfront was more open. This improved the city's health and look. Most private homes were finished by 1671. Many new public buildings also rose, including a new St. Paul's Cathedral and over 50 new churches, all designed by Wren. The Great Fire also led to new safety ideas. Before 1666, there was no fire insurance. After the losses, the first insurance company started.
Nicholas Barbon was important here. These companies helped people protect homes and businesses. They offered lower prices for brick buildings, encouraging safer building. To remember the event, a tall stone column called the Monument was built near Pudding Lane, where the fire began.
Designed by Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke, it stands over 60 meters high. It tells the story of the fire for all to see. For some, the fire had a good side. The year before, many people died from the Great Plague. The fire destroyed old, dirty houses and killed rats. After the fire, the plague did not return. So many believed the fire helped clean the city and make it healthier. London became a modern capital of brick and stone. What do you think was the most important change for London after the Great Fire?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.